Welcome to Building Bridges of Hope. My name is Daddy Chitalu. Now, the United Nations General Assembly designated 22nd March of every year as the World Water Day. Starting from 1992, in 1993 it was commemorated. By today, it's been 32 years of commemorating the World Water Day. In case you did not know about it, today we have a program featuring Mr. Kennedy Habasimbi from ADRA. Mr. Habasimbi will join me on this program to talk about what ADRA is doing in sustaining water or in supporting rural areas and also urban areas to make sure that they have water for every person. Welcome to the program, Mr. Kennedy Habasimbi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chitalu, and good afternoon, viewers.
Thank you so much. Let me start first of all with World Water Day. The theme for this year is glacier preservation. How do you interpret the theme for World Water Day?
Thank you. Now, probably the starting point is what are glaciers? You know, probably some of us who stay this side of the warmer part of the world may not understand, but we are basically talking about the ice. You know, especially in the further south and further north, there are these big ice, and they hold quite a lot of water, and so they need that water needs to remain into the ice form. Otherwise, if it melts, what that means is we will have more water in the water bodies, and that will entail flooding. Certain countries, probably like Netherlands, would not be there because currently they are below the sea level. And so if that water increases, it means they will be flooded. So we need to keep these ice blocks or glaciers intact so that we remain existing as human beings. So this year's theme is talking about preserving glaciers, meaning we need to maintain a certain level of global temperature so that they don't melt into water that will affect us. So we are all promoting maintenance of that by making sure that we don't increase the temperature globally.
Thank you so much. In case you missed the point, is talking about glaciers. So these are ice, water that has been compacted or that has turned into ice, and it should not melt, because if it melts, it says countries like Netherlands would be flooded, and also it would mean we would have floods all over. Elder Habasimbi, for us who do not have those glaciers, how can we fit into this year's theme, preservation?
Thank you. So what happens elsewhere affects us one way or another. And so since we are one global village, so why should we be concerned as us here in Africa? For instance, we don't have, this part of Africa, we don't have the glaciers. Now, we affect what happens if we increase to what we call global warming. Unfortunately, the temperatures, you know, which we have around, they hover around the world, and each one of us can contribute. So meaning if we are burning a lot of charcoal, for instance, the trees, we are cutting trees, we are increasing, you know, leaving the earth bare, and that also increases the amount of heat coming on earth, and then as it rebounds, quite a lot of it, then we are increasing the temperature. They talk about if we increase the world temperature by 1.5, almost all those glaciers would be gone, and there will be a lot of flooding and everything, and you know what that would mean to us. So meaning even us who don't have glaciers here, we have a part to preserve them by making sure that we do not increase to the global warming through activities which we do either through farming or burning and stuff like that.
Thank you. He says even us who do not have those glaciers have a role to play. Talking about us also having a role to play, I'd like, dear viewer, also to tell you that you have a role to play. You can visit Hope Channel Zambia Facebook page or the ADRA Facebook page and like that page. Coming back to you, Mr. Habasimbi, what is ADRA about? I would like you to share with us, or with the viewer, ADRA's mission and your focus.
Thank you. I know, of course, we've been talking about ADRA. ADRA is an acronym, basically. It's okay, ADRA. And the A stands for Adventist, D for development, and then we have the R for relief, and we are an agency. Or what that means is we are an Adventist affiliated organization that looks at development and humanitarian issues, but we are also an agency. What means is we are able to get resources, public resources everywhere, and then implement what we do. So our mission statement or purpose statement is to save humanity, so all may live as God intended. I repeat, to save humanity, so all may live as God intended. What that means is that as ADRA, we go in a community and look for a needy person, regardless of their affiliations of anything, and then we save them so they can live as God intended. So the saving we do is in many areas. For instance, we have activities in the health sector. We have activities in the water and sanitation sector, like we are talking about water today. We have activities in the agriculture sector, in the education sector. We also have activities meant for empowering. Empowering who? The people in the communities, so they may live as God intended.
Thank you so much. I take you back. You mentioned that you are an agency. An agency meaning you can get funds from the public and also help our communities. Which are the most affected, the urban areas or the rural areas? Or what is your main concentration?
Thank you. Maybe for a long time, most people in the social sector, like ADRA, meaning in the civil society, and they were used to be a concentration in the rural areas. However, there is a realization that even in the urban setups, there's actually serious poverty, sometimes even more than what we experience in the rural areas. And so, as ADRA, we do have a balance. So we have our programming happening here in the rural areas, but also in the urban setup. Like here in Lusaka, we have activities in Mutendere, in Kamanga, even we do activities in Matero and all these other places, because we realize that the needs in the city, they may be different, but they are needs. Equally in the rural setup, there are also needs, and so we do program for both.
You mentioned that you do health,
yes,
water and sanitation.
Yes.
I would like you to take us step by step.
Okay.
In addition to health, okay, talk about water and sanitation. I think in details and how you're impacting the communities.
Thank you. Like someone says, water is life. Statutory, even myself here, we are almost 90% water. Okay. That being the case, it means water is very critical to every living creature, or even including plants. And so water is one of the key aspects for us. And so in our programming, actually, we what we call mainstreaming, meaning water has become part of every part of our programming. That said, as ADRA, we have been actually intervening in water supply itself, because people, livestock, including plants, they need water in adequate, and this should be clean water. And so we are intervening in providing the water itself. It should be clean and meeting the standards, like WHO standards, so that it's safe for someone who is taking it. Apart from that, we also provide water for production, because you realize that, for instance, last year, where we are coming from, we had a drought, and that meant that there was no water. We had wells drying up, we had water bodies drying up, and it did not just affect people, but it affected crops, it affected livestock, and so water is critical. And so for us, providing water is one of the necessary bloodlines for the communities we work. And so we do that.
It's easier said than done. It's easier to say clean water. For example, even in Lusaka, we may all boast to say we have clean water, but that could not be the case when it comes to the water table. I'm not going into details, but share with me the process of how you give clean water to rural areas.
Thank you.
What do you add? What do you do? Do you test the water levels, or I mean the pHI levels, or do you have teams of doctors, or how do you ensure that you provide?
Thank you. Most surface water, meaning the water we see, of course, is contaminated with a lot of impurities, biological and some chemical and stuff like that. I think just a few weeks or so, we had an accident on the copper belt where water was contaminated, through this mining activity. And so most of these surface water bodies actually are contaminated. However, the soil is supposed to be the best purifier of water actually, meaning the groundwater is expected to be maybe one of the safest water we can get. But depending on what happens, if we take, for instance, Lusaka and the like, we find a lot of groundwater contamination, maybe because of settlement patterns and what's going on. It could also be from industrial pollution. So even groundwater, though it's supposed to be clean water, it can be also contaminated. So for ADRA, for most of the rural areas, we still do the groundwater, and we dig deep hole wells and then pour that water into a water tank and then distribute it so that it's more of tap water or hand pumps. Now, for a long time, we used to do hand pumps, but we have since transitioned into what we call reticulated systems or solar-powered schemes, basically, for several reasons. One, because hand pump will be doing quite a lot of them in an area, and it becomes costly, and issues of maintenance is a challenge. But if we can do a deep well, and then we can get enough water, if we can site it properly, put it in tanks, and then we can distribute it in several communities using a pipe. And so maybe in terms of labor also it becomes easier because you're just opening a tap. And even in maintenance, it means maybe it's just a tap to deal with. And when we use solar, thank God we are blessed with solar in this country. It also helps because women don't have to line up waiting for this one hand pump. There will be a lot of water. So that's how we provide water in the communities, through schemes, and we use solar to lift it up and then use networks to provide it. Sure.
Do you do that also to urban areas?
Yes, actually, is it a month ago or so, we were handing over about 28 schools here in Lusaka, where we have provided ablution blocks, but also water systems, and we had to drill in some of these places. So even here in urban areas, we do that. Of course, we have to test that water and make sure that it's safe for human consumption, and we work with the government authorities to make sure that even where we are putting those boreholes, it's where it will be safe water.
If you find that it's not safe, what do you do? The water?
We have to abandon that, really, basically, yes. However,
what causes that?
The contamination? Well, for instance, here in Lusaka, there's a lot of probably pit latrines, on site. If we are neighbors, even in the in the low density areas, we will put a wall here. Maybe you have your on-site sanitation there, the septic tanks. I have my borehole here. So all that would lead to contamination and stuff like that. But in our case, when we are putting up for such boreholes, we make sure that, the environment, the government has clear laws on how we should be siting and where to put these things. And so if we follow that, we'll try to minimize the contamination. But usually it's when you are working outside that, that's when we end up with such.
Talking about water, I move away a bit.
Sure.
Why combine it with sanitation? Why not just water? Just so sanitation.
Thank you.
ADRA.
When we talk about health, Okay, health is affected actually by maybe the quality of water, and because contamination needs actually to be gotten rid of through washing and taking care of yourself. And so when there's no water, sanitation becomes a challenge. You and me, we've learned maybe over time, when you finished using the toilet, wash your hands, or regularly wash your hands, because contamination, we touch a lot of things, you can end up making yourself sick. And so sanitation becomes critical, because even if we have water, if we don't have proper sanitation facilities, then it becomes a challenge. I'll give you an example. You may have water in this borehole, but if your sanitation, you have just peat latrines and the like, the same peat latrines are going to contaminate your water. And so these two cannot be separated if we have to keep our people healthy and make them be good citizens.
Okay, what are some of the challenges that you face as ADRA in the communities that you serve?
Okay, thank you. So challenges are many as related to water, for instance. First of all, our help is usually contributory to what may be the bigger mandate of government and stuff like that. And so you'll find that when you put up a borehole, maybe it's meant to save X number of people, but then you end up saving more than what capacity that borehole can provide. And so there's that. But also I think we note that if we have to provide water, we should not just look at people only, especially maybe if it's in the rural areas. There's also livestock to take care of. We've noted that when you just provide water for people, livestock, I mean, they are the economic base of most of our people. It becomes a challenge as well. So you have all these maybe livestock coming there, leading to contamination of water. Above all, we also face challenges. For instance, some of these projects, they come maybe not fully funded. There is an expectation of some co-financing or co-funding. So that community contribution becomes a challenge in communities where maybe people are unable to, or there is no proper cooperation. Apart from that, the after service kind of thing, the maintenance is also a challenge, because sometimes you put up a water system and people continue saying the water, ADRA borehole. Right. So when it breaks down, then again they'll have to call you or they'll abandon. And so one of the ways we address that, of course, is to work in partnership with the community, because if they value water, it means they should be also part of the development and also the maintenance for sustainability.
How do you ensure there is security for those boreholes that you install? You haven't spoken about safety as a challenge? You haven't?
Well, one thing we have noted is when it becomes a public good, especially in terms of water,
Yes.
we've received some cooperation really from the community, because usually we have a water committee which is trained to take care of this borehole. If it breaks down, how are they going to buy some broken components and stuff like that? So there's normally a committee which also provides the security needed. But we also go further to basically provide a physical barrier. So whenever we do such a borehole, we'll have a small fencing there and cross it out there. In most cases, we also put a solar light, because I think such things normally would happen in the night or so. But if there's light, it tends to be a bit of a barrier. But we also try by all means not to isolate such infrastructure where it's very sitting away, isolated there, but to always be maybe closer to some family who in a way provide that security required.
Okay, before I come to my next question, which you have already touched a bit, the community response. You've told me when it's a public thing, they take care of it. But before I come to the community response, share with me about Zambia. It is said that about 40% of water, fresh water in Zambia, in the Southern Africa, or I mean SADC region, comes from Zambia. And how important is it for ADRA to ensure that clean water is also left in Zambia than just
Sending it away.
Yes, sending it away.
Thank you so much. Indeed, that statistic still stands, and I think we have even more water bodies in the northern part of the country. We have a little bit also in the southern part of the country, and we have some draining rivers like Zambezi, Kafue. They also pass through the southern part of the country. I once listened to one government official. They said in Zambia we get, when there's good rain, probably we get up to 160 billion liters of water. And we are only able to keep 60 billion for 3 months, and then the rest is going. And so maybe this brings us to the issue to say we need to trap actually more water as a country, and that can happen if we can do the rain harvesting. I'll give you an example. I've been to Gwembe, which is a southern province district, next to the Lake Kariba there. There are times when it has not rained, but there will be rivers full of water, and all that water is passing, going to the lake, which is okay, but none of that is maybe being retained. And a few months or few weeks later, the place is very dry. And so we need to improve also maybe the rain harvesting or retaining this water for production, but also to be able to use it for domestic use, because the challenge comes in if there is little water. I'll tell you, for instance, we've done over 1,000 water points in the country. And one of the challenges we faced last year was that most of these water points would be maybe boreholes of up to 70, 80 meters. They dried up, especially in the southern part of the country. And now, to do a borehole, we have to go 100 meters minimum going down there, so which is very expensive as well. But it also means if people are getting water from afar off, their hygiene becomes compromised, because we're just getting water for drinking. We can't wash our hands or bath and stuff like that. And so we need to retain water one way or another. Earlier I told you that, well, most of the recharge points, even here in Lusaka, we have built, and it's concrete. It's nice development, but we are also blocking the water going underground, meaning we may be facing a challenge also of low groundwater because the water is not seeping through. And so those are some of the issues probably we should be addressing even as a country. How do we retain these billions of water here so that we can continue? And I think secondly, how do we also utilize that 45% of water? It's a good thing to talk about them and the like, but may be useless if we are not utilizing that water for the benefit of us. So we need to think also how can we utilize that water to make safe water for everyone.
What could have been your advice as ADRA or as an individual? Say, the flashy floods that we had, did you see potential as ADRA dealing with water and sanitation? Did you see potential to harvest that, or what is wrong, or what is your advice?
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll speak also as an engineer, but also as ADRA. Okay. It was sad, of course. We lost lives, we lost property in the past floods, like here in Saka, and that shouldn't happen, actually. But maybe it also gives us a few lessons. I'll tell you something. I have been privileged to be in Ouagadougou. This is the capital of Burkina Faso. And one thing you see there are big drainages passing through the city. And they are gathering this water somewhere where that water is then used for irrigation and stuff like that. So I think God is gracious. Last year we didn't have rains. This year we had rains. It shouldn't be a case. Water should be a blessing. And so maybe we need to see how we can gather that water and utilize it actually. And so as ADRA, floods also means we are getting ground recharge, but it also means that maybe even when the floods are gone, people can even grow in those places where there's still some moisture and grow more food. So we see it as a blessing, despite maybe the challenges it also comes with. But I think we need to think through as a country, as a sector, say how best can we keep this water and use it for the benefit of everyone.
I still take you back, preserving glacier preservations. Those flashy floods or past floods were also small glaciers. They were glaciers in some way.
Yeah.
Is there anything wrong with our drainage or the areas where water is supposed to sink down, or what has happened, and how can we preserve that water? The same floods that we're complaining of.
Thank you.
In relationship to the theme for World Water Day.
Yeah, I think just like we are saying, let's preserve the glaciers so that water remains in those ice, because it's safer for other people, islands, and those people who are in the coast lines. Even in our case, we probably need to preserve certain areas so that we avoid the floods. Like I mentioned earlier on, that there are certain places which historically are supposed to be recharged for water, but maybe because
Places
of
like which one?
places like, for instance, I'll say Arcades area, all that area.
Mandahiwa Arcades?
Mandahiwa area there. Geologists or hydrogeologists will tell us that those are supposed to be some of the recharge areas and stuff like that. But of course, we have built these nice looking, unfortunately, maybe even our homesteads, we also pave everywhere, and we can't even recharge on our own. The water is moving away. So in a way, probably we need to preserve the recharge areas so that we can continue having, at least if we can't get the surface water, but we should have a lot of groundwater to help us continue having safe water for production, but also for domestic. And so we have our own glaciers, like we said, which could, in this case,
we are not preserving them. We are
recharge
putting
areas. We are putting pavers and
then send
all
the
this
water
kind.
to the neighbor. The neighbor also sends to the neighbor.
Exactly. So I think those are some of the challenges which we need to face as a country, as a people. Say, how can we preserve these ground recharge areas or channel the water in places so that it doesn't end up in floods which affect us?
Thank you. I come back to the point where I stopped you. What has been the community response over ADRA's support in health, water, and sanitation? What has been the community response?
Thank you so much. So as ADRA, as you may be aware, we are working in 8 provinces. Our mandate or intention is to work in all the provinces, actually. So at the moment, we are not just on the Copper Belt and the Northern, but those are the other areas we need to go to. And so when we put up such water system, maybe we should carry you one day so that you help us to tell the story, 2 days, to help tell the story about what we see there. We see a change. I'll tell you one example of where we've provided water in Choma. There's a place called Mpangwe. The project we have is about enhancing dairy, milk production in these rural communities and stuff like that. But because of the droughts and stuff like that, in this particular area, there was no water for the community to drink, neither water for the livestock. And they have to walk maybe 10, 20 k's to look for water and stuff like that. That affects productivity, but also affects the people, including health and stuff like that. And so there was a budget made provision to put up a very nice water system. We drilled a borehole, put tanks there, about 10,000 liters. We've also put some lines of taps here and there, and also troughs where animals are drinking from. You need to see the smiles on these people's face and the stories they are talking about, and it addresses quite a number of things. Like I mentioned, the livestock are never covering now 10 k's to look for water. The people don't have to be walking kilometers to look for water and spend time, near the wells. We are also talking about the children, because sometimes people send children to go and get water, meaning they may have to miss school. But because water is close by, then the children can go to school because the parent or the guardian can manage to get water. And so they are also growing gardens there. So meaning we are addressing nutrition, we are addressing the income side, because from those gardens they are also selling vegetables in there. And so it's a multi-sectoral impact, because I'll tell you also that during the drought last year, we have what we call small gardens. People even dubbed them Adra gardens. Well, we fenced off, and there's a water point. They are growing vegetables. Those were some of the green areas you could see in Gwembe during the flood. And they really helped the communities grow vegetables, sell, buy food, eat even for themselves. And, you know, this, and then when they tell stories, impact stories. And so, as ADRA, we fulfill our mission when we see happy, smiling faces who tell stories of change in their lives. And we love that, because that tells us that the mission is achieved.
Thank you so much. I'll be coming to a personal story. You have to pick just one personal story from the community, which you have touched a bit. But before I come to a personal story. You have mentioned so many things to say. You feel good when you see people smile because they have a garden,
Yes.
sometimes dubbed as Adra Garden. When you see their animals have taken water, and also children walking long distances who might spare that time for school and other things. Does it mean what you are doing is improving on the economy of individuals or communities? What's the impact?
Thank you. Like I mentioned, those small Adra gardens.
Yes.
Last year, because of the situation of hunger, a lot of families actually depleted their assets. They keep goats, for instance. They would sell goats.
Another goats to Lusaka.
Well, people actually, there were some people who were even taking meal like in some of these hard to reach places like Gwembe, I know, Nakasika area. People will take the meal there and they'll say, for this bag of meal, give me 3 goats. And so that means the goat, and how many times are you going to exchange your goats? And so a lot of people kind of depleted their resources. And so by providing them with these such gardens, they were able to grow vegetables there. They were able to grow even green maize, which they sowed, and then they were able to buy a bag of meal. They were able to, you know. So that alone helped them have some money. In their pockets, and it helped them, and it also saves their livestock, because that water is also being used. And so we know that the rural economy, you know, lies in the assets they have in there. And so if they're able to keep their chickens because there's water, the goats are watered, or their livestock, the animals, I mean the cows have water, that is where the economy lies. Or if they're able to grow vegetables and they can sell and they have money, it means they have income to actually buy their basic necessities. And so our approach, be it to health, to agriculture, to water, has an economic benefit as well.
I would like you now to isolate one story. I know you spoke about Mpangwe, but maybe there could be a story that you think you can share with the viewers. Who knows, they might partner with ADRA, make a donation with to ADRA.
Thank you.
Or to Hope Channel.
Exactly. I have so many stories, and those of you who would want to hear more about ADRA, please, if you can come to our sites, just type, even social media, Instagram, we are there, TikTok, we even have a website, ADRA Zambia. You can get a lot of stories, and I actually struggle to say which one, but maybe talking about Mpangwe, there is Mary Nchemunya there. This is a lady with children going to school, and she used to walk many kilometers with the children to fetch for water. And she struggled last year, just like any other community in there, a member there. And so when we put up this borehole, I remember actually we had visitors from UK, Harrier Shepley, and the husband, James Shepley, and we went to visit this community, and water was a real challenge which they could see. And they promised that we are going to go back to UK and fundraise actually from the church. And so the Mpangwe borehole was made possible not by the project money, but because these people who came to see what the project is doing went back and fundraised money from the church members. They told a story about what they've seen in Zambia. And as we speak now, there is this beautiful borehole providing water to close to 200 families. Not only families, but we've put also troughs where the animals are drinking. Now, this is a community which has also over 500 animals, so to say, and they are drinking from there. The people, 200 households, they're drinking from there. Not only that, for Mary specifically, she has also put up a garden. And because there is water close by, her children who would miss school regularly because they have to help her get water, they are now attending school. It's a plus for us under the education side because we keep children in school as much as possible. And so she's keeping the children in school because water is now close by. She's keeping children in school because she now also has a garden where she's doing vegetables, and she's selling those vegetables to buy some of the scholastic needs for the children to be kept in school, while she can also continue getting water close by. It's such stories which make a change to Mary, and when you see Mary, she's an all-smiley lady because of such kind of an infrastructure.
Thank you. You mentioned that it's now saving over 200 families.
Yes.
I thought you meant 200 people, but 200 families.
Yes, and you know how my
What's an
my
average
tongue.
on an average per family? Is it like urban where there are 5 people per family?
Well, of course, our statistics say our average is 6 people, so to say. But you know, my relatives from the southern part of the country, we are normally bigger families. So that 200, you may want to say, well, maybe there are 2,000 people if we assume there are 10 people per family.
And that's where my question lies. How can 2,000 people fail to provide a borehole for themselves? Tell me, what has been the problem with the communities we live in?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that critical question.
2,000 people failing to provide one borehole.
Those are the questions usually we get, maybe even from people when we are soliciting for resources. Maybe you were even nice just saying 2,000 people, but probably these are people also who own cows and stuff like that. One challenge we have to work on is the mindset as well.
Mindset.
Yeah, and one of the issues we deal with as ADRA also is showing people that let's start with what we have. It's easier even for us ADRA. Earlier on I mentioned that even these people who give us resources, they'll say, what is it that you are bringing on the table as ADRA? And time and again we have to look for co-financing. We say, we are asking for 100 kwacha, we have 10 kwacha, we have 20 kwacha. And so as communities, I think we still have a long way, but there are communities really who are very forthcoming, but we still have a long way to reach some of those self-reliant kind of situations. And we keep on talking to one another so that maybe we can also see things differently. It's easier even for ADRA to come to a community that says, look, we are able to do 1, 2, 3, but the gap is here. It's easier also for us to then pick such a situation and present to funders, say, hey, these people are able to do this. But where there is a 0, and when we do an analysis, you say, oh, 2,000 people, or maybe they even have cows, why not do something halfway? And so that's an area where we still have a lot of work to do as a country, especially in the communities, because responsibility or local solutions needs to start with us, including showing that we are able to do a bit and the help is required in this manner.
Thank you so much. You spoke about mindset a bit also. How do you ensure that people change, there's behavioral change afterwards for every project that ADRA has, so that there's progress or development.
Sure. Very good question again. So, change is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And one thing I would like to credit our communities here in Zambia is that probably also us development practitioners, we are the source of a challenge, because if we don't involve them and just come with a solution, one, probably they may not participate because they don't fully understand what we want to achieve, or we have made things so easy there is nothing else they can do, okay? But what we've noted as ADRA, and we do that, is that we carry the community right from the beginning. We like having the local grown solutions. So if we go in village X, we are not going to tell them that here you need water, you need this, you need this. No. We start with them, what are the resources you have here? What are the challenges? So that we build the issue together, so that they can then prioritize what is important in their community, and then how can we do it? So we come in as a catalyst, you know, just trying to help them think through and what they can do. We've seen that there are many other projects we've done with very little resource actually. It's because the community themselves have picked it up. And so that model of involving the community, not when you have the money and say, hey, what can we do? But even when the money is not yet there, engage them, so that when even it comes to say, okay, now you, what are you bringing on the table? They'll find it easy to commit whatever little resources they may have, because they are part of the solution. And even the after, or the sustainability, becomes easy because they know that we've put something. I'll give you an example of such. There's what we call, I think it's commonly known, village savings, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, where people put money. So as ADRA, we use a model where we will pick the community, train them, teach them about village banking and how it's done and stuff like that. But we don't put resources there. The resources come from them. I can proudly tell you that a lot of village savings groups are thriving, and mainly because people put money there and they've seen it grow. They will take care of it, and you know, they basically grow that way, compared to where maybe we are going to say, here is a revolving fund, use it. Yeah, you'll find that they can't bring back. So that just demonstrates that if communities are involved and they are part of it and they put something, something is likely to succeed than not.
I like your point that you mentioned, even when there are no resources, even when there is no money, we want to visit this community and advise them all to use the local resources of what they have. In this line, or in the same vein, what is ADRA's future plans? What are your future plans in terms of health, water, and sanitation, and the communities that you are impacting?
Thank you. Like I mentioned, water is life. And so in all our programming, whatever we are doing, water becomes critical. And so there are projects, for instance, we have a project which we are calling Metro. It's a project which is looking at sanitary products for the girls, keeping girls in school. Basically, we are attending to 20,000 girls, 5,000 boys. They are part of it as well. Now, initially, such a project was meant to just give them the sanitary wear, and that's it. But then later on, we realized that there are other gaps, and water popped in. Because if you give me this part and I'm supposed to change them from school so that I don't miss school, but there's no water in school toilets. And so that becomes a challenge. And so we noted, and so going forward, even in this project, we are focusing also on, if we are going to provide the sanitary ware, we should also provide water, because the two move together. And so even in other projects, be it an agriculture project, an empowerment project, water is always embedded in there. And so also to pick it that we have also moved away from this single borehole, hand pump kind of things, because they don't serve a wider community. They also have challenges of maintenance and the like. So going forward, ADRA, when they are going to put water, they will put a big borehole, overhead tanks, and then lift it up with solar energy, and then put a network of pipes, and then have taps everywhere. And so in the communities where we provide water, that's what we've been doing, and we've seen it work very, very well. And so that's our plan as regarding to issues of water and making sure that people remain healthy.
Okay. Thank you so much, dear listener. If you are following our featured Mr. Kennedy Havasindi from ADRA, the country director. Your closing remarks, and don't forget comments on World Water Day.
Thank you. Preserving glaciers so that they don't melt and submerge some of our communities in the world, even affect us, means that each one of us is supposed to take a role. Let's not pollute, let's not burn, let's not increase the greenhouse gases or the global warming so that those will melt. We have our own glaciers like we mentioned here. Let's preserve the water recharge points so that we can have groundwater. Let's also have order where we throw the solid waste, the garbage, because I've seen also that maybe in most of our drainages we throw dirty there. What that does is goes to contaminate the water which we are supposed to take as well. So self-responsibility at individual level is very critical. Community responsibility, even as we plan leaders and stuff like that, we need to look at safe water provision critically, because water is life and it concerns each one of us.
Thank you. You have heard water is life. World Water Day focuses on awareness, and it also ensures that there is preservation. And in addition to that, there should be action. Are we taking water for granted? You have heard from my guest, Mr. Kennedy Havasinde. Take water seriously. If you want to donate to ADRA Zambia, please visit their website and you will be guided on how to do it. For now, thank you so much, my guest, to have come and explain on this program, Building Bridges of Hope. Until next time, my name is Dadich Talu. I'd like to thank the team on duty and also management. For now, goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.